On to this now. It's not yet clear who will have control of the U.S. House and Senate following the midterm elections. Vote counting shows that the vote is neck and neck. A set of close contests will determine whether Democrats keep their slim majorities or if Republicans will seize control of one or both chambers. Early data suggesting Republicans are leading in the race for the U.S. House. Now, Democrats currently control the 100-seat Senate, with Vice President Kamala Harris unable to break any of the 50-50 ties. Officials say that the counting of ballots is expected to take some time. Let's stay with the story. We're joined by Voice of America's Hayde Adams. She's covering these elections live for us in Virginia. Hayde, good evening to you yet again. Of course, day 2 of being able to cover at least the actual voting and vote counting process that's underway. Any particular patterns that are emerging so far?
Well, Kathy, I have to tell you, I do move around quite a lot. So I am in Washington at the moment. I was at the polling station yesterday, of course, in Virginia. But nevertheless, look, as you were mentioning earlier, a lot is, of course, still in flux. Vote counting still continues in many places around the country. But you know that red wave we have been talking about for days now that Republicans were expecting? Well, by their own admission, things are starting to look more like a red ripple for the Republicans in these elections. A lot remains unsettled, of course, but Republicans are confident they can still gain seats enough to take control of the House of Representatives. On the Senate side, Democrats are hopeful they can keep control of the House, may perhaps make some gains, but of course some of these races are very close, especially in places like Arizona, Nevada and Georgia, and it could be days before we have any real results coming from those races. But as we have been hearing from voters in the past few days, 2 issues were top of mind. On the Republican side, of course, it was all about inflation and the state of the economy. For Democrats, it was about reproductive rights, about Roe versus Wade, and women saw this as an attack on their women's rights. So it will be interesting to see, of course, at the end of the day, which of these 2 messages really won out.
Let's talk about then what we're seeing from the different candidates. We have Joe Biden campaigning for the Democrats, Donald Trump campaigning for the Republicans.
Well, yes, this was, we saw, well, in certain states, of course, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, both, they went with every candidate. The strategists were very careful to make sure that in places where they might not be as popular, that they were obviously not campaigning in those places. But yes, they were stumping for Republican and Democratic candidates. Joe Biden today seems to be in very good spirits. I think the Democrats are very surprised at how well they have been doing. They have had wins that probably they never expected they would have. And so there's a lot of discussion today also among pundits about whether they perhaps underestimated Joe Biden's value to some of these races, and because they're not seeing that all-out repudiation of President Joe Biden and the Democrats. Look, as much as we talk about these midterms being a referendum on President Joe Biden, they were in a way a referendum on former President Donald Trump as well, especially now on the day after, and everybody takes a look back. There were 2 really standout developments. For one, now your viewers may know Mehmet Oz from the Dr. Oz show, because I know that show used to play in South Africa, at least. He ran for the Senate here in the state of Pennsylvania. He was up against the Democrat John Fetterman, and Dr. Oz was a Trump-backed candidate, and last night he lost. One of the other really big developments came out of Florida, where Ron DeSantis won a 2nd term as governor in that state, and he did it without Donald Trump's help. The rivalry between the 2 of them has been much publicized, and they could very well face off against each other in a 2024 presidential race should the 2 decide to throw their hats in the ring. And also, another development is that some of the most aggressive deniers that Joe Biden won the 2020 election, some of those lost their governor's races last night. So there certainly is a lot for the Republicans to go back now to the drawing board and see who really is the leader of their party, and especially where Donald Trump is concerned, whether he still holds the same influence and power in the Republican Party going forward. In recent hours, Donald Trump has come out saying he shouldn't be blamed for any losses that the Republicans suffered in these midterms.
Hayde, I also want to talk about some of the surprises from candidates that we've seen coming out of these elections.
Well, Kathy, this election was certainly not short of any surprises. There were certainly some history makers as well that we saw last night. The state of Maryland, which is not too far from where I am now, the state I live in, and for the first time in history, that state got its first black governor in the form of Wes Moore. In the state of Massachusetts, Maura Healey became the governor, and she is now the state's first openly lesbian governor. And then in Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee is the first female governor. Remember, Sarah Huckabee used to be Donald Trump's press secretary. Well, she made history in that state last night. So certainly a lot of excitement on both sides about these history makers.
All right, Hayde, we'll leave it there. As you heard, could still be some time yet before those final election results are expected to come through.